Good morning, everyone. Today is Thursday, June 10th, and my name is Shonda Harris. I'm a business opportunity specialist with the Columbus District Office of the SBA. We are excited about today's training. Welcome to today's, with June, we have a new series that we're kicking off, Best Practices for Continued Federal Contracting Success. We're really excited about today's training and all throughout this month, and actually what we've been building up over the past few months. So if this is your first time joining us, welcome to today's series. For those that are repeat performers and that have come back and joined us, thank you so much. We are in for a treat today. We have two SBA employees. Some of you may be familiar with one, but the other, a lot of you, probably most of you, are not familiar. So we're talking about continued contract success. Once you actually win a contract and you're awarded a contract, all of your hard efforts pay off. What kind of goes on after that? What are some of the things that you should be aware of? So actually today we are bringing Procurement Center Representative, a PCR, and a Commercial Market Representative, a CMR, to give us their perspective as it relates to you as a small business owner, as a contractor, some things that you need to be aware of as you're looking to get that contract off the ground. And hopefully we do want everyone's contract to run smoothly, but sometimes there may be some bumps in the road. Sometimes you may have questions about clauses. So they'll be going over several different things that you should be aware of. We are also in for a treat. As I had an opportunity to learn, the CMR, Stephanie Lewis, is a seasoned employee of the SBA, and we have some additional extra things that we'll be offering you today. Some government contracting hot topics. So those of you that may know Wendy Williams, she has a section called Hot Topics. No need to go to TV, we'll bring that to you here today, but from a government contracting perspective. So we always like to give a value added and extra benefits to you as small businesses. So you're in for a treat. Speaking of value add, somebody gave a clap, thank you. Speaking of value add, that's what this entire series that we're bringing today's presentation on continued contract success. This is a collaborative effort, today's webinar and all the webinars that we've been putting on. It's part of our government contracting series that we collaborate with the Ohio University PTAC. And we're so grateful to have them as partners in bringing these sessions on. So if you are new to government contracting, if you're joining us today, new to, or maybe you've been doing business at the local level, with the city, with the county, with the state, and you're looking to do business at the federal level, well, the PTAC, the Procurement Technical Assistance Center, is the resource that can help you do just that. So today, if you are new, some of the things that you may hear may seem a little overwhelming, or you may feel like I need to take a course to find out everything that they're talking about. But that's why we're grateful that we have the PTACs as a resource, and they're the ones that you can sign up with, and they can actually walk you through, give you a foundational background and understanding about federal government contracting, or what you need to know, how you can get set up as a vendor. To give you a little bit more information about PTAC, who they are and what they do, I'm going to ask Sharon Hopkins, who is the director of the OU PTAC, to give us a little overview about PTAC.
Hi, thank you, Shonda. Couple of things just for housekeeping. I did put a link in the notes or the chat today for the website where we will upload this particular event, as well as other events that we've already uploaded. Most of them are pretty relevant. We've been doing this less than a year now, so we have some pretty good stuff up there. The PTAC stands for Procurement Technical Assistance Center, And we are funded through federally through the Defense Logistics Agency, and then the state of Ohio, and then Ohio University matches funds to provide a service to businesses across Ohio. Ohio University actually covers 62 Ohio counties. We have offices in the Cleveland area, Akron, Columbus. We have one at the Pickerington branch of the OU campus, as well as Dayton and Cincinnati. And then of course, I'm located over in Athens at main campus. We provide assistance to companies to sell to government and at all levels of government, so we can help you look at local, state, and federal opportunities. We have a bid match program that will match you against opportunities that are out there. We assist you in getting registered at the appropriate site, depending on what agency you want to market to. We help you create and develop a capability statement, which is something, it's a marketing tool that government likes to see. We also give you pointers on marketing. We will do and assist you or do for you a report that tells us what agencies buy your product or service. And we kind of walk you through the whole process of bidding. So if you find a solicitation, especially in the federal market, solicitations can be daunting, they can be huge. So we can walk you through looking at what's important, what you need to pay attention to, what you need to be aware of that's required in that particular solicitation. And then we walk you right through that process. We cannot write your proposal, but we certainly can guide you, as well as look it over before it's submitted to make sure you don't have a glaring error. And then and give you advice on asking questions, if there's an open question period, all of those things. And then we can also help you at the end if you have troubles getting paid, or the federal government, especially certain agencies, require you to go through a process that's a little daunting to somebody brand new. So we help with that. And then we also assist with set-aside groups. So, you know, right up front, we will help you identify any set-aside opportunities for your company where you could get certification. And we can walk you through that process as well. So we sort of are there to answer your questions and to hold your hand throughout the entire time. We also are very active in training. We partner with the SBA to conduct these trainings. We used to do it monthly. Since the pandemic, we've been doing several a month. And lately we've been running a series every month. So, you know, we have those available on our website. Last year, the Ohio University team was responsible for $1.4 billion, and that's with a B, dollars in contracts for our clients. So we're pretty excited about that, especially in a pandemic year. And we're hoping to be able to do more for additional clients. There's also, as you go through, if you're not already a client but interested, at our website, which is just the ptac.ohio.edu, there's a link that you can, it says new client registration, and you can register there to be a client. So welcome to today's event, and I hope you learn a lot and enjoy it. Back to you, Shonda.
Thank you so much, Sharon. And again, if you haven't signed up as a client, please do so after today's webinar. I'm a little partial to PTAC. They're always going to be near and dear to my heart. I used to be a PTAC counselor prior to working for the SBA and being a BOS, I used to actually work for Sharon. She used to be my previous boss. So they are a great resource. And again, if you're at any age, stage, or phase of your business and you want to do government contracting, they really are the resource to assist you. So shout out to, I see several PTAC counselors, and even the statewide PTAC director, Sharon Smith, is on today's training. Larry Brown in Cincinnati, Bill Cox in Dayton. So we really do have a great team of experienced counselors that are there to help you. Again, today's session is recorded. The link, as Sharon said, will be, she posted it in the chat, and I probably will send it out again so that you can go back and access this, as well as we really had some great trainings last month on how to respond to RFIs, RFPs, RFQs, and even in April on capture management, how to find opportunities. So please also be sure that you go and you check those out. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce, because we have two speakers today. I'll introduce the first, and maybe Phil McLean, who is a PCR Procurement Center Representative. And Phil, I'm going to have you to introduce Stephanie, since she's going to follow you, and you know her very well. Phil McLean is a PCR Procurement Center Representative. You'll hear more about his function and his role. We actually have two PCRs here in Ohio. So great to have him as a resource. He is actually an employee of SBA, but he's housed at DLA over in Columbus off of East Broad Street. It's been a valuable resource to us in contracting, as a former contracting officer at DLA. So has many years actually working with contracts, knowing the FAR. So a great resource that Jill and I look to, Jill Nagy Reynolds, the other BOS in the office. Sometimes if our firms run into issues, or we may have questions about the FAR, the Federal Acquisition Regulations, all those wonderful things that are in your contract that you have to abide by. So he has a great understanding about that. So go ahead, Phil. We'd love to hear from you, and you can introduce Stephanie once you're finished.
Okay, thank you, Shonda. I'll introduce Stephanie when my portion of the presentation is over. Also, thank you, Sharon, for setting this up. And a little bit about myself. Like Shonda said, I am a PCR. I have a background as a contracting officer. I'm going to share my screen now to start my presentation. If you guys have any questions, my preference is to go ahead and answer them while I'm on that slide. So go ahead and put your hands up. Thank you, Shonda. Yeah, go ahead and flag with your the reactions button. I don't know if everybody has the same view that I do, but put your hand up and Shonda can acknowledge.
If we could ask everyone, Phil, instead of maybe raising their hand, if they could type them in the chat.
Oh, that
and
works
then
great.
I'll go ahead and pull them off, and I can ask them, because that way, because we do have a nice amount of people on here, and I won't be able to see everyone's box. But if they can type them in the chat, I will grab it, and then I can pose the question to you.
Great. Just to begin here, we're going to talk about the Procurement Center representative functions. I am a Procurement Center representative. I work for the U.S. Small Business Administration Office of Government Contracting in Area 4. And what we're going to cover today, here are the course objectives. I'm going to provide an overview of SBA's Office of Government Contracting. We typically call it GC, but on this slide it's OGC. We're going to cover our mission and programs. I'm going to explain the roles and responsibilities of a PCR, some of the tools that we use. I wanted to definitely point out the differences between a PCR, like myself, and a BOS, like Shonda, and help you guys understand how to contact the PCR if you need to. Created in 1953, the SBA is a cabinet level federal agency designed to help small businesses pursue the American dream. We do this by providing counseling, capital, and contracting expertise to small businesses. And the contracting expertise is through our Office of Government Contracting. Here is a website or a link to our website for our headquarters Office of Government Contracting. You guys are more than welcome to go ahead and check that out. The SBA Office of Government Contracting is broken down into 6 geographical areas across the United States and territories. Currently, I am in area 4, which you can see is in the center of this map, covering the 10 states highlighted in yellow and red. That's the Great Lakes and the Great Plains regions. And what our offices do is we, work to ensure that small businesses obtain a fair share of federal contracts and subcontracts. Okay, so this slide is kind of an overview of the Office of Government Contracting within SBA. Within these 4 separate groups here, there's some contact information in case you need it, but the Office of Government Contracting, we are in charge of the size and status programs. We also do certificates of competency, which is a topic for, it could be its own 1-hour topic that maybe we could talk about sometime in the future. The Office of Government Contracting also contains our commercial market representatives, which is Stephanie. She's a commercial market representative. She'll talk more about that in her portion. And then procurement center representatives, which is what I'm here to talk about. So let's get right into that. PCR roles and responsibilities. First, I'm going to start off with PCR authority and qualifications. So the Small Business Act provides the authority for the position of a procurement center representative. It's codified in federal regulations in the FAR, or the Federal Acquisition Regulation, at subpart 19.402. That's also 48 CFR 19.402, essentially the same thing. And then in SBA's own regulations at 13 CFR 125.2. And if you wanted to go and read those, you can read a little more about what our defined responsibilities are. So the qualifications for a PCR is they have to be acquisition professionals. So that's the 1102 contracting series. We have to be level 3 certified in the contracting field. We have on-the-job training requirements. That's something along the lines of 80 hours of continuous learning points over every 2-year period, so that we maintain our knowledge. We are in positions of public trust, and we hold security clearances, so we can discuss a lot of things with agencies as needed. We all have backgrounds in acquisitions, obviously, and we are part of there's a release of contract information limitation on what we can talk about. So procurement sensitive information and source selection sensitive information, we can't really talk about that with like a small business. We may be able to talk about it with a contracting officer, but we couldn't release sensitive information, so to speak. So we're on to the next slide here, unless anybody has any questions. All right, so this slide shows the different types of procurement center representatives. First, there's an area-wide PCR, and every area office, the 6 areas that I showed you on that map, every one of those has an area-wide PCR. They can typically cover the entire area as needed. So they're not specifically assigned in the way that the other PCRs are, kind of a floater position. And a lot of times that is an additional duty, as they are probably also either 2, 3, or 4 here on this slide. So let's talk about 2. That's a statewide PCR. That's pretty self-explanatory. That's a PCR that covers an entire state. And it could be multiple states as well. So it's right now our staffing is a little crazy. So we have that going on a lot, where we have a PCR covering multiple states at the same time. So there's also the situation where we have multiple PCRs in a single state. You have that here in Ohio. I cover certain agencies within the state of Ohio, and I have a counterpart who's down at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base who covers other agencies within the state. Some states have a lot of contracting agencies within their geographical boundaries, so that might be more than one person could handle. And then there's PCR locations and procurement center assignments. Typically, well, I'm not going to say typically, but a lot of the times our procurement center representatives are assigned to specific procurement centers. So they will have their office in that federal contracting agency's location in their building. I currently have an office over in the Defense Logistics Agency building on the east side of Columbus, just south of the airport. They are a major procurement center, and they do a lot of purchases. So it's just best for us to have a PCR at that location. But I also cover a lot of other agencies throughout the state, from Cleveland down to Cincinnati. So it's a kind of a hybrid of how we have our PCR set up right now. So I'm going to talk about PCR's customers. Our main customer, actually, believe it or not, is the federal purchasing activities, the buyers, and that could include program offices too. One of our main jobs is to remind them of SBA rules on government contracting, and also to keep them up to date on the latest provisions to those rules. And then the main conduit is the small business professional, or small business specialist, as they might be called. They are our primary point of contact with an agency. So they are the go-between, the middle person between the SBA and the contracting officer, for like 90% of the time. We also speak directly with small businesses to provide counseling and assistance, answer questions, things of that nature. We also communicate with SBA staff from other programs, such as my interactions with Shonda. She's technically in a different office, and we interact quite regularly. So that's just an example of that. And then resource partners. This is where PTACs fall in. We love our PTACs. They do a lot of the heavy lifting. And that's just one example of some of the resource partners we work with. We also work with the small business development centers and some other organizations as well. So here is an overview of the PCR position. The main thing is we always, we put small businesses first. So we advocate on behalf of small businesses and all the actions that we do. And we do a lot of training with federal agencies, to go over the rules that they need to follow. We mediate small business issues, and this works both ways, actually. This could be a small business issue with a federal agency, or vice versa, an agency issue with a small business. So we like to get involved informally and mediate those kind of issues so they don't get out of hand. We the main portion of our job is to work closely with the federal buying offices. That's why a lot of times we are co-located with them. And how we do that is we communicate with those agencies on upcoming requirements. So when they have solicitations that haven't been solicited yet, requirements that haven't been solicited yet, we'll look at them and assist them. That kind of covered the first two bullets there. We inform the agencies on updates to our regulations and changes in our programs. We recently had changes to the Women-Owned Small Business Program, changes to the 8A program, changes to the All Small Men Are Protege program, and we have to keep those contracting officers up to date on what the latest regulations are so that they can follow them to the best of their ability. We assist agencies in meeting their goals through training, counseling, and technical assistance. I hold training events with contracting officers quite regularly, and we do monthly trainings with them on a national level. Another thing we do is we review subcontracting plans. So I know Stephanie's going to talk more about subcontracting later on in this presentation, but PCRs also have a role in that. And this is prior to award, we will review subcontracting plans just to make sure that they are they meet all the requirements for acceptability. We also receive copies of show cause or cure notices of small business firms within our territory, and we can contact those firms to offer assistance if needed. And we also are involved in reviewing the buying office's small business policies and procedures.
Bill?
Yes.
Before you go further, I'm just interjecting this, nobody typed this. Some people may not be aware what is a cure notice or sure call notice that a small business may get. Can you kind of explain that and go into a little more detail? And then maybe if you have some examples, generic examples that you can give, I think that would be helpful.
Thank you for asking that, because sometimes, you know, we're stuck in our own world where we know all of these things, but you know, we kind of sometimes we forget that not everybody knows the same stuff. So yeah, I would be glad to explain cure or show cause notices. The difference between the two is one is mainly in the commercial environment, so for commercial type contracts with agencies, and the other is non-commercial. So essentially they both do the same thing. It is a contracting agency, when they receive indication that maybe the contractor is not performing or will not be able to perform, this is after you received your award, which is appropriate for this venue that we're having. They will send a notice. So if you were late on delivery or there was failures with you know, a product or service, they're going to send a notice saying, hey, you have 10 days to show how you're going to fix this. The agency, you know, they have a contract, they expect you to perform it within the terms of that contract. And they're not going to tell you how to fix it. They're going to leave it up to you to tell them how you're going to fix it. And if that is, if your response is acceptable, you know, they can go ahead and modify the contract. A lot of times consideration gets involved, which is a whole different topic that I'm not really prepared to talk about at this time, but it could be finance or otherwise, the kind of a trade-off kind of thing, to go ahead and cure those contract deficiencies. And sometimes it results in termination. Sometimes it results in contract modifications for continued performance. So if you have something like this going on, you can definitely expect a call from SBA, or you can call SBA when you receive one, because we might be a day or two behind, and we can offer assistance. There's really nothing, no firm rules on what we can and can't do, besides we can't get involved in legal battles, but what we can do is we can talk to the agency and try to advocate on your behalf, because sometimes we know the agencies can be a little strict on their interpretations of things. And this is just to, get somebody else to assist you through that process. Is that, Sean, do you think that's sufficient, or would you like me to go more? Maybe an example?
No, I think that's good for now. And while you were answering that, someone else typed in, it's kind of a comment and somewhat of a question. I believe if this is from M. Horn, if this is Michael Horn, it's been a long time, very seasoned contractor. In the last, he's typed in the last 10 years, he's done 70 million in prime federal contracting, and he had never heard of a PCR. And he typed, do you believe this is an anomaly? And I think one of the reasons why we're really putting on this training, because we recognize that a lot of small businesses aren't aware that these resources are available. Now, Phil, have you, in all the years you being a contracting officer and now you being in the PCR role, do you hear that a lot, especially from seasoned small businesses that are doing well, that they had never heard of a PCR or a CMR? Is that pretty common?
I would say that that's actually probably a good thing. I don't think it is an anomaly. I was showing you the map earlier where we have our 6 area offices. Typically we're gonna have 10 PCRs maybe for each area office. So that gives you like 50 to 60 PCRs when we're at full strength. There's over 3,200 contracting agencies out there. And we have 50 procurement center representatives. So you can see that that's not the numbers just don't align properly. There's not a lot of us. We are kind of behind the scenes trying to make things happen for small businesses. And if you haven't heard of a PCR, it probably means you've been doing your contracting, doing everything you can and haven't had any issues. Maybe you got the same assistance that a PCR would provide from another resource partner, because PTAC, they hit home runs every day for us. They do a lot of the stuff, same stuff that PCRs do, and a lot of times they do it better. They have a lot, I'd say, in my opinion, some better resources available to them to help small businesses. So there is a lot of overlap on what we do when we're dealing with small businesses. So it's not surprising that you haven't heard about a PCR, Mr. Horn. So I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next slide.
Yes, that's it.
I'm just now noticing that one of my check boxes, my checks didn't quite make it into the box. Sorry about that. So here's some of the things that PCRs do. We audit and advocate. So this is mainly what I was talking about. This is 90% of what a PCR does. We review small business coordination records from federal contracting officers. So this is their strategy before it's solicited, before they solicit the requirement. They send it to us with a small business coordination record. It's like a form. Every department and agency has a different form number for that. The most common is the Department of Defense, the DD form 2579. So it lays out their strategy. Basically, are they going to set it aside for small business? Yes or no? And if not, why? And they have to explain why. And it's usually based on the results of their market research, that they could not find 2 or more small businesses that could compete for the requirement within the rules of the set aside programs. We also look at those records for subcontracting as well. So this is the main thing that a PCR does. And so the next thing is inform. I spoke about this earlier. We provide agencies updates on the small business regulations and changes in our certification program. For example, a recent major change was the woman-owned small business program, where that went from a self-certification program to an SBA certified program. So a lot of agencies are still struggling with understanding the rules on that, but they reach out to us and we help them wherever we can. I also spoke about the council. So this was the cure and show cause notices, and we can contact small businesses who get those to assist them if they need it. A lot of times we're told, no, we don't need you. We got this under control, and that's a good thing. Or, hey, we're going to fight this. We got our lawyers, and we won't get involved in those when it becomes a legal battle, because that's more of a formal process, and we're only here to help informally, the best that we can. We also assist the agencies mainly in meeting their small business goals through training, counseling, and technical assistance. So we do a lot of training with the contracting agencies, and we go over programs and rules, and we let them know what they should and shouldn't do, and what's a firm rule, what is a more of a softer rule where they have some discretion, and we keep them advised. And then for review, we review subcontracting plans for acceptability prior to award. So a subcontracting plan, this is usually when an other than small business, or commonly referred to as a large business, or but it could be a nonprofit organization or something along those lines. When they get a contract over a certain dollar value, they have to submit a subcontracting plan, and it has required elements as well as goals. And we review those just to make sure before they make the award that they are acceptable.
Bill, we do have another question that has come in, and maybe while I'm saying this, Eric Wimmer, not quite sure. Is the reasoning to move a service needed from small business to full and open, publicly available? I'm not quite following him.
No, that's a good question. I think I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, there are rules, and the main one is the rule of two. That's what it all revolves around is the rule of two. And I will in a slide that's coming up, I will have a little more on that. But the FAR, I think it's 19501, kind of spells out the rules for the set aside program. So under a certain dollar value, the requirements, the acquisition strategy automatically starts out as a set aside unless the contracting officer can substantially show that, hey, I can't get 2 or more small businesses to submit an offer on this, and then over the simplified acquisition threshold. It's based on it doesn't start out automatically set aside, but if they do find 2 or more small businesses that will submit responsible, well, they have to be responsible, and they have to submit an offer, or I'm sorry, there has to be an expectation that they'll submit an offer that meets the requirements at a fair market price. Then the agency has to set that aside for small business. I'm hoping. Okay, so it would be the next slide after this. I'll have the actual FAR citation for that. But right now, here I'm going to talk about the PCR recommendations. So here's some things that PCRs can recommend when in the performance of our duties. And the main one is that big green leg onto the left, set asides. So when we review an acquisition strategy, if we see that rule of two is met, we're definitely going to recommend, hey, you should set this aside for small businesses, for exclusive small business participation. That's the most important part of a PCR's job. So, we do our own market research sometimes. Most of the time, we're heavily reliant on the contracting officer, but we'll review the contracting history, the quote history, because that's a really good indication that small businesses are interested in a requirement. Is, well, who quoted when the agency bought this same thing the last time? So that's a big part of it. We also are aware of new qualified small business sources. So we may, share that with a contracting officer and say, hey, what did you consider these small business firms? And the main thing we use for that is SBA's Dynamic Small Business Research Tool. I hope everybody's familiar with that, but if not, it is dsbs.sba.gov is the website. If you worked with PTAC before, I'm sure you are registered in SAM and also have a DSBS profile. This is our main tool to identify small businesses who potentially could be capable of performing requirements. Another thing the PCRs do is we break out components for competitive acquisitions. So when an agency is using a non-competitive procedure to purchase products or services, we might find that it would be better if they removed a portion of that and broke it out for some kind of competition. We also identify alternate contracting methods to increase small business contracting opportunities. A lot of times this comes up when agencies consolidate or bundle contract requirements. So in the insurance world, bundling is great. You can bundle and save money, but in contracting, agencies are technically limited from bundling. There's a limitation on it. They can only do it when they determine it to be that they will achieve significant savings and benefits. So that's a big portion of a procurement center representative's job, is to review those to see if the agency forgot or misidentified something as a, they failed to identify it as a bundle or consolidation. There's no prohibition on the agency from doing it. It's just they have to do extra work when they do that, and they have to show that work. And SBA, actually, the PCR is the one who reviews that. So we're like that math teacher from 6th grade who always tells you to show your work. We constantly do that with contracting officers. We say, well, show your work and prove that that's the best thing to do there. And if they can't, then we recommend alternate methods. I'm going to finish I hear you, Shonda. I'm going to finish the slide though.
Yes.
We when an agency has a bid list, basically a list of concerns who they intend to send the solicitation to directly. Sometimes we can have them add small businesses to that list. That's usually not an issue most of the time. And then we can also appeal when a contracting officer refuses to add those small businesses to that list, if it would result in no small businesses being solicited at all. So hold on, give me a second. I'm going to check the chat box here.
Yeah, I was going to give the question. I can read it to you. And for those, today's presentation is the 12 noon. So if you do have to log off, that's fine. But someone wanted to know, Patrick, what is the procedure of requesting a debrief after learning you did not win a contract? We have lost out on several awards, but it is hard to know what we are doing wrong if we cannot hear feedback from the issuing organization. I have asked on several occasions, but I have never received any response to my inquiry. That's a great question.
Yeah, and that might be something you want to get the PCR involved in as well, because agencies are notorious for not getting back with businesses, small and large. They don't want to say anything that gets them in trouble, so they're just going to say nothing sometimes. But that's not right, and we all know that. which gets at the meat of your question. So to answer your question, there are specific rules on debriefings. Most of the time that falls in FAR Part 15. I'm going to be honest with you, I don't know it off the top of my head, but I will get that information to you. Typically, an agency, I think the FAR says for less formal ones that they should provide that debriefing with specified information. Sometimes it doesn't, it's up to the agency on how they want to do the debriefing, and they won't do it by, a face-to-face meeting or a virtual call or phone, a phone call. They'll just put it in writing. But for the less formal ones, like a simplified acquisition, really they only have to provide you really basic general information on who won the award and how many offers were received and what was, in general terms, the reason that that contractor won. But a debriefing typically focuses more on the strengths and weaknesses of your own offer. So that's a good question. I'm going to look into that a little more, and I'm sorry I don't know it off the top of my head. It's been a while since I've had to deal with that, because typically I don't as a PCR, but as a contracting officer in my former job, I used to all the time, and the rules change, so I do owe you an answer on that. And it looks like somebody in the chat provided some more information. And thank you for that. And yes, there you go. There's your answer in the chat box. Thank you for bailing me out on that one. All right, so here's some key FAR citations about SBA's PCRs and some of the things we do. And here's that one that I said I was going to get to, FAR 19501. These are your rules for when a solicitation should be set aside or shall be set aside. And this is, in general, the rule of two. The FAR doesn't have a definition for the term or the phrase rule of two. SBA regulations do. Essentially, it's the same thing, though. It's two or more small businesses that can reasonably expected to perform that requirement at a fair market price. That FAR 19501 is the world that PCRs live in. Like I said, if we're reviewing these acquisition strategies 90% of the time, this is what we're doing 90% of the time, looking for set-asides and looking for opportunities for set-asides. Sometimes, we think something should be set aside and the contracting officer disagrees. This is FAR 19505. They can reject the SBA recommendations. So, for instance, if I'm reviewing a proposed solicitation and the contracting officer says, no, I don't expect to receive two or more small businesses. I don't expect to receive any small business offers or only one. And I have information showing otherwise. I can, say, well, I recommend that you do a small business set aside. The contracting officer might say, I don't agree with you, and they will reject that. And there's a procedure we go through for that. And it involves an appeal process, an appeal process if necessary. And you can read all about that in 19505. But I believe that is an outdated reference. I think it might have moved to 19508 now. So I apologize about that. Sorry about that. So there's another area that PCRs get involved in under 19506, and I'll have to double check that reference too. I apologize. I am I'm just remembering now that there was a FAR change in the structuring. So it's the withdrawing and modifying of small business set aside. So if an agency set aside a solicitation for exclusive small business participation, and then wanted to later withdraw that set aside, they're supposed to send that to the PCR for review as well. A lot of times we can find that the contracting office is not technically doing everything they're supposed to be doing, and we can disagree with them on that withdrawal. But most of the time it's because they didn't receive any acceptable offers. And there's unfortunately not much a PCR can do there, because the contracting officer has a lot of discretion in that area. And then this fourth little sign here, FAR 19705-5, that's the PCR's responsibilities when reviewing subcontracting plans. So if the requirement was not set aside and large businesses were involved, and it was over a certain dollar value, they have to submit subcontracting plans, and we review those, and we're looking for small business subcontracting opportunities. I see more in the chat box.
No, I typed a response
Okay.
about the DSBS, and I was going to say something a little later, but no, you're fine.
And how am I doing on time?
You're fine.
Okay. So I'm going to talk about some of the tools that PCRs have now and resources. So one thing PCRs do, the first thing is we coordinate with our resource partners. This is, we regularly collaborate with our district office counterparts and our PTACs and our small business development centers. We have an informal referral system. So sometimes a PTAC might refer a small business to me with some in-depth contracting questions. And a lot of times PCRs will refer small businesses to PTAC with like registration type questions and bid matching services questions. We're not ignoring you. We're just trying to get your inquiry to the person who is best suited to answer you and help you. So please don't take it like we're passing you over to someone else. We tend to have areas where we are that we focus on. Federal buyers, PCRs are involved in surveillance reviews, and I know I haven't talked about that before, but that is technically an audit of an agency's small business program. And every year every area office does several. Usually we focus on the big guys who spend a lot of money, and we want to make sure that they're following all the rules that they should. We also are involved, not so much at the PCR level, but the Office of Government Contracting. They are the ones who negotiate every procurement center's portion of that overall federal government's goals for small business. So I know every agency, some agencies have a larger portion of that. DoD has a very large portion. And as we know, if DoD doesn't meet their goal, typically the federal government as a whole does not meet its small business spend goals. So our office is involved with that. And then small businesses, number 3 here, PCRs, we're here to speak, to provide counseling. We can get involved in, I say disputes, but I don't mean the actual legal term disputes, but, differences between small businesses and agencies, and we can assist either side in that. Because we kind of represent both the small business and the agency. I do want to talk about the differences between a PCR and a BOS, or business opportunity specialist. So Shonda is a business opportunity specialist at the Columbus District Office. and I am a PCR. We do a lot of similar things, but we technically are from different offices and we have different responsibilities. The main one is that a PCR is in the Office of Government Contracting, and a BOS is in the Office of Field Operations. So this is the difference between government contracting and business development. PCRs focus on the procuring agencies and their use of small business programs. And the Office of Field Operations focuses on delivering SBA's wide variety of programs. So that could include, lending and surety bonds and all kinds of the full gamut of things that SBA does. PCR's focus, or the Office of Government Contracting, focuses on size determinations, COCs, through PCRs, CMRs. We also have responsibility of the woman-owned and hub-zone programs. And the SBA district office focuses on SBA loan, education and assistance, and economic development with state, local agencies, and organizations. Here's some more key differences between a PCR and a BOS. PCR is focused on federal procuring agencies and their use of small business programs and goal attainment. So we do this mainly through reviewing their proposed acquisition strategies. And a lot of times we remind them that, hey, you're short on your goal, or hey, even though you are at your goal, don't stop now, keep going. Let's set this aside. So we're kind of behind the scenes doing that. We do outreach, we provide technical assistance, and the main thing is that a PCR is assigned to specific agencies in a geographical area. BOS, on the other hand, serves all firms in the SBA's district offices territory. So I know Shonda mentioned that that the Columbus district office covers 62 of Ohio's 88 counties, and they can serve all firms in that area. And then the PCR in that same area might only have 2 agencies, but there might be 5,000 people at those agencies. So there's a lot to go around for all of us.
We have some quick questions, Phil, and I
Sure.
know we're coming up to 11 o'clock. This is a good problem. But just to quickly know that the Columbus District Office covers 60 of Ohio's 88. PTAC covers 62. So they have us.
Oh,
by
I'm sorry.
60. No, that's okay.
I was trying to give you more work, Shonda.
I know. Trust me, I don't want, we have enough. Michael Horn wanted to know, we have a couple questions, so I'll see if we can quickly get through those.
Okay, I see Mike's question about equitable adjustments.
Yes.
Well, to answer that, I guess informally we wouldn't get involved in the specifics, but we might be able to assist in at least getting you an audience. We don't represent firms in that matter. That's more of a legal requirement. We're not lawyers, and we don't provide legal assistance or legal counseling. But informally, we can talk to the contracting office and say, hey, can we sit down and have a discussion about this, or can we have a conference call, something along those manners? Then yes, we can get involved in that.
Okay, thank you. And the next one, should the PCR and BOS or both know the capabilities of a local small business?
Well, in general terms, yes, we should know some of the capabilities, but we're highly reliant on the small business telling us what their capabilities are. We're going to typically believe you that if you say you can do it, that you can do it, and you do that at your own risk. So I definitely don't recommend saying that you can do everything. And then you get into a contract where you find out you might not be able to. And then you dug your own hole on that one. So there's really nothing we can do after you get that contract besides, maybe have discussions with the contracting agency and they may be lenient on you for that. But in general terms, yeah, we definitely need to know what you're capable of. But that's why we highly recommend when small business firms are registering and doing their DSBS profile, that you put in some of your capabilities there, some of your past performance. And then we use that. That's a major tool for us when we're speaking with contracting officers, when they're making these set-aside decisions. Was that all the questions, Shonda?
Yes, and we're trying to type in the chat the other ones so that we can allow you to focus to finish, and the other ones we can kind of handle. Thanks.
Okay. I'm going to go on to the next slide. I want to leave Stephanie enough time, so I'm sorry. So this is just general information on how to locate a BOS. I chose the Indiana district office because I didn't want to make it uncomfortable for Shonda here. No, and I cover portions of Indiana and Michigan as well, so I have interaction with them. If you go to the DSBS, so if you guys haven't gone to DSBS yet, as you can see, it's a pretty important tool. We use it a lot, but you can use it as well. And here's an example. You would go to the DSBS and you would enter to search for your own firm. You would either enter your own name or your DUNS number or your cage code to find your own firm in there, and you can look at your own profile. And I recommend everybody do that, just to make sure everything's accurate and up to date. But within that profile, you will be able to see your business development servicing office. In this example, this firm was covered by the Indiana district office. And I've circled that here on this screen. And then you can then take that information, go to the SBA website, go to local assistance, find under this box here that has the drop downs, you put in Indiana, and you would choose the drop down for SBA district office, and your results should show up there on the left, the Indiana district office, and you can click on that, which will take you to that district office's webpage. This one is for Indiana. I think it had a big COVID picture on there, and I didn't like it, so I went with I changed the picture for you guys. But every one of these district offices, on the left-hand side, you will see an office directory, and within that office directory, you can find who your BOS is. In this situation, it's Vernice. Vernice is a great person. I'm assuming nobody here's from Indiana, but if you move to Indiana, Vernice has got you covered. If you're in Ohio, you're covered by either the Cleveland district office or the Columbus district office. Cleveland has a single business opportunity specialist. Columbus has two, and they're two of the best people I've ever met. It's Jill Nagy-Reynolds and Shonda Harris, and their contact information will be within the directory. Now, locating a PCR is a little bit different and maybe a little more complicated. I know that last one had a lot of steps, and I wish it was easier. That's just, unfortunately, when you have a program that covers the whole country, it can be kind of difficult to get it to just one click. But PCRs, there's less of us, so you'd think in theory it'd be easier to find out who to contact. But since we cover procurement agencies, you're going to have to look us up by procurement agency. And like I said earlier, there's over 3,200 of those. So we've done our best to break that down for you guys to be able to find the correct PCR. So just because I'm in Ohio doesn't mean I'm your PCR. Like I said, we are at the federal agency. So you want to talk to the PCR at the agency you're doing business with. So if you're doing business with a firm or a federal agency that's in California, you're going to want to contact the PCR in California. I mean, you could contact me, but I would I would just tell you, hey, you need to contact this other PCR. And I have no problem doing that and helping you find who that PCR would be. So this is also from the SBA website. At the top, you will see that link for federal contracting. And if you click on that, this will show at the bottom here, counseling and help, get the help you need, Procurement Center Representative, right? This is, if you click on that, it'll take you to this next page. And on this page, you will see a lot of PCR names. So which PCR do you choose, right? This is our PCR directory. It's organized by SBA area office. Like I showed you on that map before, there's 6 areas. And then it breaks it down further by state, and then by PCR name and agencies that they cover. I highlighted those in this example. We're under Area 4 here. Ohio's within Area 4. I am one of, I think, 7 or 8 PCRs in our area office. And you can see the agencies that I cover in Ohio. If you looked at Michigan, you would see that I also cover agencies in Michigan and Indiana as well. So if you scroll a little further down on this page, you will also see that there's another PCR in Ohio, Dr. Thomas Kruzmark. He covers Wright-Patterson Air Force Base and the Ohio Air National Guard, and I pretty much cover the rest of Ohio. So if you're doing business with any of these agencies that are in my portfolio, so to speak, feel free to contact me with any issues that you have. And if you're dealing with another agency, you know, I just showed you how to look up PCRs. I usually, just a helpful tip, I go to this website, and once I get to this page that we're looking at here, I do the Control F to do a find or a seek. It brings up the find box, and I start typing in the name of the agency that I'm doing business with, and I can find out who the PCR is quickly, as opposed to scrolling through the whole thing. And I recommend you guys do that as well.
Bill,
Yeah.
I think this will be the last question that we'll take, so we can, James wanted to know, you said you cover parts of Michigan. Do you happen to cover Detroit, Michigan?
Well, I don't cover, wide areas like that. We cover specific agencies. So what I cover in Michigan is specifically the Defense Logistics Agency in Warren. So we do have a PCR vacancy in that area. So all of the agencies in Michigan are kind of spread out PCR coverage throughout our entire area office. So there's people there's PCRs in Indiana, Ohio, Michigan, other places who are covering until we fill that vacancy. But if you go to this page here, the agency that you plan to do business with should be listed there, and you can contact the PCR. My portion of Michigan is rather small. I cover DLA, the Defense Logistics Agency, Warren, and I also cover VA NCO 10, which covers Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan. So any VA in Michigan, and then specifically DLA Warren. So if you know the agency that you want to deal with, then you can find the PCR who's best suited to help you with any of your questions about that. And I'm going to the next page here. It's just not moving for some reason. Oh, there we go. Oh, well, that was the last page. So does how can I answer any of your questions, guys? I want questions. I want to be able to help you the best I can.
Bill, if you don't mind, because we did take a nice amount of questions on yours, and we are like at 10 after 11. Can we go ahead, and if you could
Introduce Stephanie.
Stephanie, and then we'll have her to go. And then if there are additional questions at the end, then we can take those.
Sure. Okay, so I want to introduce everybody to Stephanie. Stephanie, as Shonda said, is a seasoned SBA employee. She's over her time with SBA, she's worn many hats. She's been a PCR before. She's been a size specialist, and I think a deputy director for an area office, and she's is a CMR and one of the best CMRs in the country. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce everybody to Stephanie Lewis.
Thank you. Thank you, Philip. Yeah, my name is Stephanie Lewis. Right now I'm serving in a capacity called the Subcontracting Program Manager, and I was just started that job this past Monday. I did start with SBA in 1991, so almost 30 years ago, as a commercial market representative, hired in the Los Angeles office of SBA's government contracting, and worked there for about 7 years, and then transferred to the Dallas-Fort Worth office, and I've been here ever since. I work in another area from where y'all are located. I serve Area 5, which is Montana, kind of down through the United States, through Texas, and we have 11 states. And your CMR in your area is Deborah Crumity, but she had another speaking obligation today, actually training the Department of Treasury on subcontracting plans. And so she was unable to make it, so I agreed to step in. My role as subcontracting program manager is just to create the infrastructure and the program for which the CMRs work under. I was a CMR for at least 23 years. I've had other duties assigned along with that, so kind of dual hats along the way as well. Working in SBA size protest program here for the last 20 years, and kind of sabbatical thing as a PCR. And I've also worked in our certificate of competency program on and off through the years, running that program for our area at times as well. The programs, they do interplay a lot with each other, a lot more than people understand. You know, we have limitations on subcontracting that comes into play that affects almost all of our areas. We have size, making sure that you maintain your small business size status if you participate in any type of small business set aside, or if you self-certify yourself as a small business with a large prime contractor. You'll want to make sure that you are a legitimate small business, because that size can be protested by other offers or the contracting officer, or even SBA, if there's any cause to question your size status. And at that time, you'll be responsible for substantiating your size status to SBA, and we'll conduct a written determination on that. But today we're here to talk about specifically commercial market representatives and what they do and what they can offer. If you want to go to the next slide, Philip. Today we're going to talk about three main areas. What is the role and responsibilities of a CMR? How you can find subcontracting opportunities, and then understanding when and how you should contact a CMR. Next slide. Like Philip's slide, this is one that he had, and which was similar, and I just adapted it a little bit. CMRs do have a lot of customers, and we work with each of them closely. Our main customer is always small businesses at the SBA. We are always doing everything and creating everything with the intent of providing maximum practical opportunity for contracting opportunities for small businesses. And that is our whole mission and purpose here in government contracting, is to get the most dollars we can in the hands of small businesses performing federal contracts. And everything that we create is within that mindset. We do work with the prime contractors. This program focuses on those. They are the companies that, a prime contractor is the company that receives the contract directly from the federal government. We also work, as Philip mentioned, with federal buying activities. Those are the companies that are negotiating the subcontracting plans with the prime contractors, which in turn let subcontracts to small businesses. And then we work internally here with our SBA staff, and we rely heavily on our resource partners. Our resource partners being primarily the PTAC, the Small Business Development Centers, the Women's Business Centers, the Veterans Business Centers, because the CMR's mission doesn't include counseling small businesses per se. We do talk with small businesses and advise them as they contact us, but our preference is to refer them to one of our resource partners, because they have the time to spend time with the small business going through steps to get into federal contracting. And they also have resource tools and workshops that go along with that similar purpose. For instance, I know here our PTAC offers something called a data mining workshop. So what that does is it shows you how to use the internet and tools within the internet to find opportunities both in prime and subcontracting yourself. Because unless you're using a bid match service, which a lot of PTACs do offer a very low price bid match service, whereby they do the combing of internet and provide you the potential opportunities that are fine-tuned that perhaps your business could bid on. You can use that type of service, or you can choose to do it yourself. And they can show you either route there at the PTAC, whether you want to do that yourself or have them do a bid match service for you. And there's also commercial companies that do bid match services. But I would talk to your PTAC and get a relationship established with your PTAC, no matter what stage of federal contracting you're in. If you're a seasoned federal prime contractor, or whether you're just getting into government contracting, I recommend a really strong relationship with your PTAC. Next slide. I want to explain to you a little bit about how subcontracting opportunities occur. It's not to say that federal prime contractors wouldn't subcontract with small businesses if we didn't have this mechanism in place. But after the war, SBA saw that a voluntary program wasn't as strong as we would like for it to be. So SBA created, or the government created, small business subcontracting plans. And basically what it says is that any federal contract that exceeds $750,000 or $1 million if it's a construction contract, that's awarded to an other than small business. So other than small is a term that we use. It basically means large business, but we don't use that term because, nonprofits can be not small businesses. So we just use the term other than small. So other than small means a company that is just not small. So any federal contract that's awarded to other than small business over $750,000 has to have something in it called a small business subcontracting plan if it has any subcontracting possibilities. And in this plan, the prime contractor specifically states efforts that it's going to take to demonstrate that it's going to make a good faith effort to subcontract to the maximum extent practicable to small businesses. Not only to small businesses, but there are also subset groups. Women-owned small business, small disadvantaged business, hub-zone small business, veteran-owned small business, and service-disabled veteran-owned small business. In the small business category, in a DoD contract, they are also able to count subcontracts awarded to nonprofit agencies that serve the blind and the handicapped, the NIB-niche entities. Women-owned small businesses, for purposes of subcontracting, is a self-certification category. You may know that SBA is now certifying women-owned small businesses and economically disadvantaged women-owned small businesses. However, for purposes of federal subcontracting, you do not have to have either one of those certifications. You can self-certify as a women-owned small business. Similarly, you would just self-certify as an SDB, a veteran-owned business, or a service-disabled veteran-owned business. Hub zone is the only category that requires certification in subcontracting. You would have to get SBA's hub zone certification to be counted in that category. Also, to be counted on a VA contract as a veteran or a service-disabled veteran, you do have to have certification and be on the Veteran Administration's vendor information pages. I think they call that CVE certification. What does self-certification mean? Self-certification means that you have represented yourself to the prime contractor to be small and or to fit into one of those socioeconomic categories. If you check HubZone, they're obviously going to validate that within the dynamic small business search database. But you would represent yourself either on a form that you receive from the prime contractor, we call that a written certification, and it's just going to have, you know, the categories and boxes, and you're just going to check those that you qualify for, and then sign the form and turn it back to the company. But the regulations also do allow prime contractors to use sam.gov as a valid self-certification of size, and so a lot of them are doing that as well. Next page. I didn't know if we had any questions on that page, Shonda. I don't have the questions pulled up.
We do have one, but it's a little more detailed. And I said, we'll save that toward the end because it's not really related to what you're talking about. So we'll save it to the end. Okay.
Sure. Great. So what's in these subcontracting plans other than goals? On that previous slide, you saw all the categories. And so in that plan, the prime contractor is going to identify both dollar and percentage goals that intends to subcontract to each of those size classifications. This slide explains what else is in the subcontracting plan that may be useful for you to know. In that plan, they have to describe types of supplies and products that they're planning to subcontract out under that contract. They also have to identify the method that they're going to use to identify potential sources to fulfill those goals. And so the ones that are named in the regulations and the ones that you may want to get involved in so that ultimately the prime contractors find you when they look at that source are SAM, of course, veterans organizations, the Minority Purchasing Councils, Vendor Information Service, the Research and Information Division of the Minority Business Development Agency and the Department of Commerce, and trade associations that are associated with small HubZone, STB, and women-owned businesses. From my experience, where do they find them? They search in the dynamic small business search, and they participate in their local councils that are in the area. The Women's Business Council is big here in Texas, the Minority Supplier Development Council as well, and the Veterans Council, the HubZone Council, those types of organizations. And so when they have a requirement for a subcontract, they may reach out to those groups and find out what types of companies they have that could potentially fill that need. The plan is also going to name an individual that works at the company who's in charge of this small business subcontracting program. The term we usually use is something called the Supplier Diversity Advocate or the Small Business Liaison Officer. That's the term that most prime contractors assign to that position. So when you discover a prime contractor that you want to do business with and you call the company or contact it or you're Google searching it, you may want to use the term Supplier Diversity or SBLO, Small Business Liaison Officer, because what you ultimately want to do is you want to drill down to the name of the person that can assist you in opening the door to doing business with that prime contractor and finding out what is their procedures for which they introduce small businesses into their company. And a lot of times that begins with filling out a vendor profile, supplying information about your company. What I would encourage you to do is to do that, because you have to do that a lot of times just to get in the door. They're not going to let you bypass that. But once you've done that, if you don't see any activity, what I would recommend that you do is you contact the small business liaison officer directly, either by email or phone. And you ask and you try to get the name of the buyer that buys that commodity for that prime contractor. If you can secure that name, you've gotten very far. And starting to develop a relationship with that buyer, whereby you can start asking questions to the buyer, such as, at what regularity do you buy this product? Do you have any current or future opportunities that you foresee for this product? How can I get on your bidders list for this product? A lot of times you can get that information from the SBLO as well. But if you can get to the buyer, if that's how they're organized, if they're a big enough company where they've segregated commodities by buyers, that is the relationship that you'll want to establish and maintain and try to develop. As you can tell, doing business as a subcontractor is a little bit more complicated, I believe, than doing business as a prime contractor. Because in prime contracting, generally you can use Fed Biz Ops to find contracting opportunities, things that are ready to be bid on, where you can just begin preparing your offer and submit the bid to be considered equally with those other offers. In subcontracting, it's a little bit different because the opportunities honestly are a little more hidden. There is no formal mechanism for which prime contractors have to advertise opportunities. And so it's really behooves you to do your research. You really have to identify what product you have a match with for prime contractors, and then do some research and find out about that prime contractor, who its small business liaison officer is, how it buys, who it's currently buying from is often a good thing to know. Do a little research on your competitors in the area, and then begin establishing a relationship and figuring out how to get involved in the procurement at that prime contractors. Back to the slide, the plan must also contain assurances that the prime contractor is going to make a good faith effort to acquire the articles, equipment, services, supplies, and materials, or construction work from the small businesses that it used to prepare its bid in the same or greater scope, amount, or quality. We call this the, can't think of the name of it anymore, but we put this regulation in place so that when you have developed a relationship with a prime contractor and they've used you in their bid to secure the contract, they don't then in turn find another subcontractor to do business. They don't then in turn find another subcontractor to do business with. So if they choose to use another subcontractor, they have to notify the contracting officer and go through some other hurdles to discourage them from doing that. They also have to assure that they will pay their small business subcontractors on time in accordance with the subcontract terms. Those two regulations there are new, and they are added for the protection of small businesses that choose to participate as subcontractors. Next slide, Philip.
Stephanie.
Yep.
Someone had a question. If you could repeat the names of the contacts, the points of contacts that you listed for prime contracts. I'm not.
Okay. Typically the term is Small Business Liaison Officer, or SBLO. And another term that they frequently use is Supplier Diversity, and then Supplier Diversity Advocate or Liaison or something like that. And that's just like terms you would want to use in your Google search, or the word small business and then the company name. And if they're not using those terms, I would lead you to the purchasing department and then try to find who their small business advocate is within that department. If they have federal contracts, they must have someone named as their small business liaison officer. And, in the Ohio area, I did a little looking in the system before the presentation, and I found that, in the Ohio area, the major primes, Goodrich is one of the major one, Battelle Memorial Institute, Parker Hannafin, HDT Expeditionary Systems, L3 Fusing and Ordnance Systems, and Messer Construction. There were a lot of Ohio prime contractors, and those are just the top, 6 or 8 that did federal contracting in fiscal year 19. So you could start with the biggest ones, or even the smaller ones. And we'll talk a little bit about where to find those names here in a moment. But on the slide, it talks about what a CMR does. And so I talked to you a little bit a moment ago that counseling small businesses is not our main aspect. And it's really not the main aspect of a PCR either, because we are really internally working with the federal agencies as a PCR to get things set aside for small businesses to bid on. And as CMRs, we are more of a compliance and auditing function. When these large businesses have subcontracting plans in their contracts, SBA's job is to monitor their compliance with those subcontracting plans. So what we do is we conduct periodic reviews to determine whether prime contractors are in compliance with their small business subcontracting plans. So the things that were on the previous slide, and then the goals, and then there's actually a lot more things in a subcontracting plan as well. I just didn't write them all out, but they're all listed in FAR 52-219-9. Are all the things that a prime contractor has to be doing to maintain a small business program at their company that fosters the utilization of small businesses. And so what we as CMRs do is we go in and check and make sure that that's being done. Goal accomplishment is a big thing that we focus on. There's different types of plans. Some subcontracting plans focus on subcontracting for a particular contract, meaning they're setting goals for a specific contract and by contract. And that is probably the most common. There's another type of plan that we have called a commercial plan. And this is the kind of plan that, like Rubbermaid, American Airlines, the pharmaceutical drug companies, they have commercial plans. And that's because they produce commercial items and they're just selling to the government. They're not producing something specifically for the government. And the government is just buying what they produce in mass that's available for the public. So they have a different kind of plan called a commercial plan. And this plan, they set annual goals for those small business categories as an entire company or as an entire division. And so it does have a ripple effect, because these commercial companies are not just setting goals for government work. They're setting goals for their entire company to do that amount of business with small businesses as a whole. What else do CMRs do? We monitor questions that come in through an email address called subcontracting@SBA. And this is an email address that's used by agencies, prime contractors, and small businesses, and our resource partners to ask questions specific to the subcontracting program. We provide education and training to agencies and large prime contractors regarding how to be in compliance with your subcontracting plan. And we do have a directory of our CMRs. I mentioned Deborah Crumity is yours there in Ohio, but we have CMRs located throughout the United States, and there are significantly less of them than there are PCRs. We have 6 CMRs that cover the whole United States. So you can tell that their time is very tapped. And the majority of their time is spent on the auditing aspect of subcontracting plans. Next slide. I think this is the golden question of what you're all probably wondering is, how can you find small business opportunities in subcontracting? And I've talked a little bit about this, but these are the recommended steps that we have for doing so. Most federal agencies post a listing of who their federal prime contractors are on their websites. You can find them either on a specific agency website or on the OSDBU office website. OSDBU is the Department of Defense Office of Small Disadvantaged Business Utilization. It's an acronym that they use to describe the small business function of DoD. And so you can search for those. There's a few listed on SBA's website at www.sba.gov/contracting on our prime and subcontracting tab. There's a few agency directories listed on there as well. And what that will give you is the name, address, and point of contact information at the large prime contractor, so that you can begin researching and then contacting the prime contractor. You can also find recent prime contracts that were awarded in beta.sam, well, I guess it's not beta anymore, it's just sam.gov. That system announces awards, and you can search those to find companies in your area that you may then want to contact for subcontracting opportunities. The thing about subcontracting opportunities is it's tricky because we have some prime contractors that are searching for subcontractors prior to their own bid. So they are planning to name who their subcontractors are in their offer. So therefore they have to do a lot of preparation before they even place their own proposal as to know who their subcontractors are going to be. You'll find that in a lot of highly complicated and high dollar value contracts. They're going to know their subcontractors prior to even bidding and have those already outlined in relationships and even joint venture or teaming or subcontracting agreements with those subcontractors. Then we have the type of prime contractors who are always looking for subcontractors. A lot of times you'll find that the companies with the commercial subcontracting plans, they are always out there looking for subcontractors to do business with. You'll find that in construction companies too. They will have a bid list, and when they have a job that they're potentially going to bid on, they send out bid opportunities to the pool of potential subcontractors that provide that trade and get in the bids for that job so they know their own pricing structure for their proposal. But it's either one of those two things. You're either going to have a prime contractor that does all the preparation of its subcontractors before its own proposal, or one that just is always continuously looking for small businesses. When you have big companies like Lockheed, Raytheon, McKesson, et cetera, they are always out there looking for small businesses because they have recurrent opportunities continuously because they are primarily federal contractors themselves. But one thing that you'll want to keep in mind when you're marketing your company is, in most instances, they already have a company that's providing what you provide. Unless it's a new or unique item or service, there is a company that's already providing that service or product to the company. And so and a lot of times those relationships are well established. And so when you talk to a prime contractor, you kind of need to get a handle on that, because even sometimes when an opportunity is not there and available for you, it's not bad news. It just tells you to move on and look elsewhere. Because if you can find out that they have a 5-year contract with a subcontractor and they're only in their first year, it's not going to behoove you to spend your next 4 years knocking on their door. What you need to do is mark your calendar, and then on the end of the 4th year, you begin remarketing to that company in hopes of getting an opportunity for the next time that bid goes out. We do see a lot of long-term contracts happening both in prime and subcontracting. And so sometimes those opportunities are not there for you when you knock on the door, but it doesn't mean that they will never be there for you, but it does mean that you need to focus your attention elsewhere until that opportunity becomes available. Like I said, I always recommend you reach out to your PTAC. They have that bid matching service, data mining workshops, and a lot of them provide matchmaking events directly with prime contractors. Here in the Texas area, our PTAC sets up direct matchmaking events where they match small businesses with the prime contractor for the day. And that small business gets to market its company to that large prime contractor at that event. A lot of them lately have been virtual, but some in the past, of course, were in person. And a lot of the trade groups also have matchmaking events that offer the same type of service, where you may go to a conference where each of the prime contractors have a booth, and then you go around and you market your small business to them. And then you also can attend workshops and participate in matchmaking sessions as well. We do have something called Subnet at SBA. Subnet is a posting system that is used by federal prime contractors to advertise current subcontracting opportunities that they have for which they're looking for small businesses. I'll just tell you that it's heavily used. It's supposed to be used by everyone, but it is heavily used by construction companies. It is worth you going in there and clicking, on the state of Ohio, perhaps, and then reading about potential opportunities with prime contractors in the state of Ohio that you could bid on. You can also get from that system and looking through those opportunities, maybe names and contacts, information for buyers for a commodity that you are able to provide. And like I said earlier, attend procurement fairs. You can become aware of these through the SBA district offices, PTACs, the OSDBU office, or local trade associations. A lot of times you can meet a lot of prime contractors this way at these procurement trade fairs. Like I said, they'll have booths, and sometimes there will be, 150 to 300 prime contractors there in the one room in the convention center. You can just move around and meet each of them. It's a unique opportunity where you have face-to-face contact with a vast number of prime contractors at one time that would spend you days to do on phone and email. So you may want to search and get involved in those. Next slide. Just a few tips. I think this is my last slide, just kind of a few tips learned over the years. I talked about most of this. Prime contractors seek most subcontractors prior to submitting their own offer, but some continuously seek those. Self-certification can be through SAM or written or electronic representations with the prime contractor. To be a small business in federal contracting, you have to be small for the NAICS code that the prime contractor assigns to the subcontract. And first and foremost, when you are marketing, you should emphasize your company's skills and expertise. And then as a secondary measure, introduce your size and socioeconomic. And then just to let you know, prime contractors can count companies towards its subcontracting goals for all that it qualifies. So if you're a small hub zone, woman-owned business, then the prime contractor is able to count you towards all three of those goals. And so be sure that when you do tell them about your size and socioeconomic status, that you do tell them about all that you qualify for. You'll notice that there's no 8A goal in subcontracting. There is no 8A goal. Those companies are generally considered small disadvantaged businesses. Which encompasses those that are socially and economically disadvantaged businesses. Next slide, Philip. I think that one might be my last one. Oh, where was one? Oh, I just wanted to reemphasize that email address, subcontracting@sba.gov. It is monitored by our CMRs on a rotating basis across the country. So you'll be talking with the CMR when you use that email address. And next slide. That's it. So I'd be happy to take any questions, Shonda.
I do want to circle back to more in depth, and Phil, also, if you want to chime in, because I'm not as familiar with this. She's mainly interested in applying for one of the certifications for the socioeconomic programs, but she says she's not sure if this is, well, their company is in an employee stock ownership plan.
Okay.
And I haven't heard of that, but I'm sure Stephanie, you have. And they have been trying to figure out how to qualify as a WOSB or a SDB or an 8A. Are there exceptions or alternative definitions for ESOPs, employee stock ownership plans, in terms of how ownership is defined? Or are we kind of stuck because of the structure of the business? They're in the construction industry, so it's basically impossible to get a majority of their employees as women, even though we have female leadership, if that makes sense.
Well, I'm not entirely sure, but from a size standpoint, you can be small and be an ESOP-owned company. For women-owned, I know the definition is that you're 51% owned, operated, and actively managed by a woman or women. But I would definitely reach out to someone in our women's program to get clarification on how that's applied to an ESOP.
And Jennifer, I know with the new changes, as Phil said, with the woman-owned program, I know we have leadership up at headquarters, and I would have to check because I am not familiar with that. So I can send you my email, and I'll put this question in there. And you can email me directly and I'll see if I can get an answer for you on that one. Thank you. Let's see, there is another question. Sean asked, where can we go to get certified? Oh, I can answer this. Where can we go to get certified as a minority-owned company? If you are, there's several different certifications at the local level, at the state level, there are different certifications, and the PTAC is the wonderful resource that can help you. If you're in Columbus, the city of Columbus does have a minority-owned certification. The state of Ohio, which with the city of Columbus, that's MBE. Also, the state of Ohio has an MBE certification and EDGE certification. Again, your PTACs can assist you with those certifications at the state and local level. And then at the federal level, there is the 8A certification, which is for economically and socially disadvantaged companies, which myself and Jill Nagy Reynolds, can assist you with that. For the sake of time, I think we're through all of the questions, and I can send, if someone has questions about 8A, I can definitely assist you with that offline. But since we have about maybe 15 minutes, Stephanie, could you kind of talk about, and thank you to both you and Phil, great information. And I think Phil and Stephanie, mainly Phil was like, I don't know if I can do a whole hour. And I'm like, Phil, I know you're full of information and awesome resources and, examples. And the same with Stephanie.
I don't know if I can limit myself to an hour. How about that?
That's it. That's it. Now that we do have a little bit of time, Stephanie, you were talking about when we did the dry run about just some of the hot topics around some of the things that are out now with government contracting, some of the things that you've seen. I think that would be great for you to kind of share some of the things that are on the horizon for small businesses, since you serve in different capacities, not just CMR.
Sure. Some of the things that are hot topics, as you may have heard, that our All Small Mentor Protege program has merged. The 8A All Small Mentor Protege program and the All Small Mentor Protege program have merged together, and that has introduced a contracting opportunity that is open for everyone to find a mentor and potentially bid as a joint venture prime contractor on either federal prime or subcontracts. And if you choose to do that, you'd have an approved SBA Mentor Protege agreement. You would create a joint venture with your mentor, and then you would bid on a contract, and the size of your mentor is not considered. So the idea behind that program is that there is some sort of assistance that's passing from the mentor onto the protege, whether it be, technical, quality, human resources, contracting, that transfer is occurring during the contracting and the period of the mentor protege agreement. And we've seen a lot of increases in contracting whereby those joint ventures are being used in contracting. We also we're going to be having a transfer of the veterans certification from the Veterans Administration over to SBA. We haven't quite got that in place yet, but over the next year or two, you'll see that happen. We have a change in our size regulations for how a small business is calculated. So you may have noticed that the size standards that are associated with the NAICS codes that are assigned to federal contracts and to federal subcontracts, that sets forth the standard for which you're small for that contracting opportunity. It's changed a little bit. It used to be that you would, if the size standard was a gross receipts figure, you would average your last 3 years in business. But as of January of 2020, it's now a 5-year average. So that allows 2 more years to enter into the averaging. So if you are a business that is just teetering there on your small business size standard, perhaps this new averaging method brings you beneath the standard so you could continue to bid as a small business. We also have the same is going to be happening for our size standards that have number of employee size standards. So that used to be a 12-month average. It is going to be changing to a 24-month averaging to allow some flexibility with your employee staffing levels and your size. Those are the 4 things I could think of off the top of my head that you'll see coming out. Of course, most people have already heard about the requirement that women-owned small businesses and economically disadvantaged women-owned small businesses are now certified by SBA to participate in contracts under certain NAICS codes. That's all I can think of, Shonda.
Okay. Thank you again, everybody typing in the chat, just saying thank you, very informative session, fantastic briefing. I am getting some individuals that are asking about the 8A program, and I just want to say, if you are relatively new to federal government contracting, you still can talk to your PTAC counselor, not just about the 8A certification, but all of the socioeconomic programs. You can, and I would suggest that you start with your PTACs. I know I am getting pretty booked with events, and I also already have some one-on-ones. My calendar is getting pretty full for June, looking into July, but I would strongly suggest start with your PTACs. I work closely with them. So if you do need to have more in-depth session, I definitely can assist with that, but I really want to say start with your PTACs first, and then we can kind of go from there. I think this is it. Here's another question that just came in. Where can they, okay, I think this is maybe PTAC. Where can they find a list of events? Patrick, are you talking about the collaborative events that the SBA puts on with PTAC? PTAC does have events that are posted on their website, but were there specific events that you were referring to? Stephanie had mentioned in her presentation, she is housed in Texas, but I know when she does a lot with her PTAC, and they do a lot of networking, and she said the matchmaking. And so here in Ohio, one of our signature contracting events is the Ohio Business Matchmaker. And of course, due to COVID, we normally typically do that prior to COVID face-to-face down in Dayton at the Nutter Center. And that typically was in April. And so one of the largest networking events here in the Midwest area, like over 500 people attending. Due to COVID, we did shift it to online in November. I do believe we are going to plan to have it online again in November. So you can stay tuned for, we'll be sending out information, marketing information about that. And as things are starting to slowly open back up, I know we have to abide by guidelines of when we can officially start to go back out, even though we are looking to having more networking events. But prior to COVID, again, we did have several different networking events that we did do with PTAC, collaborative effort, other resource partners, and there were some networking events that the SBA was planning with some other resource partners. So just kind of stay tuned for those. And it may not be this year with the face-to-face, or maybe closer to the fall or the end of the year, but maybe next year. Here's a question. If you're a veteran-owned or SDV or service-disabled veteran-owned small business, as far as events, thank you, Michael. If you're looking for events and you're a veteran or you're a service-disabled veteran, Michael said you can check vet2ceo.org. They have free programs set up for vets. So you can check that out. I know during the pandemic, other resource partners, I know SBDC is putting on events for small businesses. As Stephanie said, if you're in any trade, if you're part of any organizational, whatever your industry is, if there are any associations or trades, I know if you're in the IT field, they do have some associations and networking groups down in Dayton. So you may want to stay tuned for that to look for additional events and whatnot. Also, I am this afternoon going to be participating in, if you're in the construction or architecture or engineering field, Sammy Kitty Hawk has an industry day outreach today. That's actually going on. It started this morning and this afternoon. So they put on events. I'll be on that webinar, I think at 1 o'clock. So just stay tuned and be on the lookout for those. I think that's it. We filled up 2 hours today. Thank you again, Phil and Stephanie. Power packed. I think this was wonderful. We've never done something like this, even though we've had Phil to speak at some other events. I don't think we've ever had a webinar. I was talking to Sharon, where, especially for our government contracting series, where we highlighted the PCR. We've never done anything. Well, we've had a panel where we've invited actually Deborah Crumity during our Ohio Business Matchmaker in Dayton. So she did come down and speak and participate on a panel, and she facilitated a panel, but I don't think we've ever had her one-on-one speak. So thank you so much again, Phil and Stephanie. And we definitely will have you back. I know we've reached out to Deborah and we'll have her to participate in other events, but thank you so much. Again, this recording will be housed on PTAC's website. I believe we put the link in there and how to get it. I can send that out to everybody so you can access this. Please stay tuned next week. Again, this was the perspective of, for continued contract success from a CMR and PCR perspective. Next week, it will be from a government personnel. So we're trying to get maybe a contracting officer, or maybe a director at WritePad, or a small business, someone that works in the small business office at one of the Air Force installations. And we do have confirmed someone from DFAS that's going to be speaking. So they will give you their perspective and some of the things you need to know as it relates to once you win your contract. And then that is the 17th. And then on the 24th, I always love to have great perspectives, and you get information from several different resources, not just government, but small businesses. So on the 24th, we are going to have, I just noticed my camera was off. On the 24th, we're going to have a panel of small businesses. So companies that have actually won awards, they have a ton of past performance. So you can hear from them best practices, some of their tips and what they would suggest, and some things that you should do. And that will be on the 24th, and that will wrap up this series. And then also, because there are so many changes, if you're aware, Beta SAM, as Stephanie mentioned, now has gone back to sam.gov. And so if you're not aware, when you go to the site, there are a lot of changes that have taken place with SAM. So on June 30th, we are going to do a training on sam.gov. Billy Grill, the PTAC counselor in Dayton, is going to do that. So we're always looking to stay on the cutting edge of things that are going on in government contracting. And we want to make sure that we bring that training to you. We are at 12 o'clock. Will the links be sent out? Yes, the link to Sharon. Can you type in the link to where, I think I did type it in the comments for someone, but how someone can access the links to the presentation. It does take about a week for the presentation to be finalized and uploaded to the website. So it won't be out there today, but next week you can check back and it will be posted. And again, please check out the other webinars that we've done. Again, we did some great things last month and in April. And then actually all of the presentations that we did for I think we started recording for the matchmaker in November. So all of that information is timeless. There's the link, Sharon just posted it in the chat to access those videos. I think there are about 6 pages of videos. So please definitely check those out. And I think that's it. Again, we used up all our time today. This was an excellent session. Again, thank you so much, Phil McLean, PCR here in Ohio, and Stephanie Lewis, CMR down in Texas, but great advocates with the SBA and advocates of small businesses. So thank you so much for joining us. We hope that you will join us next week. If you haven't registered, please register. And then on the 24th and definitely on the 30th. Have a fantastic day and a great weekend. And we look forward to you joining us again. And if you haven't signed up to be a PTAC client, you also need to do that as well. So please make sure you sign up with PTAC, or if it's been a minute since you connected with your PTAC counselor, phenomenal resources to help you during all parts of your journey with government contracting, from cradle to grave as it relates to your contract at the beginning, from the beginning to the end. So have a fantastic day, everyone. Thanks again so much for joining us. And we look forward to you joining us again next week and the rest of this month. So have a wonderful day. Stay safe. Bye-bye.